really out of the box concepts, ways of really dramatically changing things. It was interesting, I was at a conference 2 weeks ago. This female CEO, which you don't often see, but a female CEO of a health system, a specialty hospital system in California spoke. And she made this comment and it just struck me. So again, it's generational. So remember 8-tracks?
Yeah.
Okay, so the younger, you'll find them in a flea market maybe. But she said, the answer to the problems in healthcare today, are not going to be things that we even know about today. They're going to be something that we didn't even imagine could exist. And her analogy was 8-tracks. Back in the day of 8-tracks, did anyone think there was going to be iTunes? Would anyone have ever conceived of iTunes? Of course not. But that's what it's going to take. It's going to be something that it's not, again, little tweaks. It's something really radical. So you better start fostering it and managing it and making good choices.
Sure, we talk a lot about innovation at Verizon, but our CEO said in the meeting the other day, it doesn't have to be, we always think about innovation as what is the new technology that we're going to go sell or implement, but he said it could be a different way of doing the process within supply chain management. I also manage the networks there, and we totally blown up the process and how we did the algorithms and how many cards we needed, where we ought to keep them, how long it should be between the time the order comes in and we should get out to the switch where they would actually be plugged into the network. And he said that's innovation too, right? So I think sometimes we forget that just thinking differently about how we do our day-to-day job, that's also innovation.
Okay, now I'm jumping in. Perfect. I'm going to go on to the next question, but this is great. I love it. In regards to that, the part that I think is key for all of us, particularly being supply chain leaders, is you're the, and this is going to come across bad, but you're the realist in the room, because it's the piece that she just mentioned. When you're sitting at the table, and this is why it's important that they do have a cross-functional team, but when you're sitting at the table, you're the one that's going to be putting dollars and cents together. You're the one that's going to take that innovative idea of how great would it be for us to have a cloud and put a number to it, as in it's going to cost us $25.8 billion a year, and our budget's 24. You still want to do that? And then you're going to strategize with the team of how to get there from where you are. And to the point that Heidi made, it could be doing it a different way. It could be eliminating steps. But you're going to take it from the cloud or the fantastic idea and give it feet. But one of the things that I would absolutely encourage all of you to do, or what helps that innovation take off faster, is sitting down with your key leaders and establishing what those thresholds are. Like how long are we gonna toy with the idea, or how much money are we going to spend in bringing this to pass? Because similar to what was just mentioned with drug development, it's also key in anything that you're innovating. You want to kill it as soon as possible. If it is a bad idea, you want to make sure that you don't invest your people and you don't invest your money and find out millions of dollars later that it was a bad idea. You want to make sure that you kill it as soon as possible and move on to the next one. So all of you being in the supply chain, you're responsible for going out and killing it. And or if it's past you, it's got to be a phenomenal idea because it made it past the supply chain leaders. Like you can actually do it. It's real. It's got teeth to it. And it's not that you're necessarily a naysayer, but you are taking the things that are somewhat abstract in nature and bringing it to reality. And that's why it's important for you to have process training or engineering background or some of the other pieces, because when you sit down at the table, it can't purely be about dollars and cents, but it has to be about, is it for the good of our company, and is it going to be innovative enough to, like, no more 8-tracks, but now we're like the iPhone. But that's the role of how you get it to market faster, is kill it as soon as possible. That's your role.
That's a great lead it actually to the next piece, because now to introduce Michelle Robinson. So as Vice President of Marketing Global Services with Baxter Healthcare, Michelle creates best-in-class service by optimizing people, processes, and systems. And prior to joining Baxter, Michelle was a Vice President and General Manager with Covance Laboratories, And her first executive experience was with General Electric as executive manager of the global healthcare supply chain. I was so excited that Michelle was able to come today. You've traveled to it, and we really appreciate it. Was that, and you can see it in how she's articulating some of the questions, she's got a multifaceted experience base that's really equipping her and her company to deliver the best value. So you've worked within supply chain management and in a number of other functions and roles. What if you can share your perspective in regards to the collaboration skills you gained within supply chain management?
Sure. Again, one of the things, I started out in manufacturing. So before making big boxes like CTs and MRIs, I actually started making stoves in Louisville, Kentucky, building 2. So the big oven, that was all me. With that said, one of the things that you learn in manufacturing is, of course, the turn time and all the pieces that you want to deal with in order to get the product out. It's important that you work with your supply chain management team to make sure that you have the right parts, the defects are low, so you can get the product out. But as you evolve, so if you notice, I've been in a lot of different seats. One of the things that you notice, or as you evolve, we're all in supply chain. That's how I like to look at it. So I grew up in manufacturing, ended up running the global supply chain at GE Medical Systems, where I did all the direct spend, and I was responsible for supplying the lines. But the difference between a procurement person and supply chain manager is you're sitting at the table with engineering. And what you want to do, it's the piece, and I love the example that you gave about meeting 2 guys that in a garage and then buying the product. That's the kind of stuff that happens when you're not at the table. But you're not at the table if you approach your peers as the police. So it's important that I know I just said kill it, but in regards to collaborating with your engineering team, with your manufacturing team, with your marketing team, it's important that you're wanting to be a part of the solution. And of course, tactfully introduce facts and figures and all that other good stuff. But it's important to collaborate to get it to market sooner, is what I would say. In regards to all the jobs that I had, I would say that it led up, having a strong supply chain background led up to me even being able to cross over into the world of marketing, because that's how it all starts, is with an idea. So you're sort of kind of responsible for that piece as well. I don't know if I answered it, but yeah, we're all, in my opinion, and I said that earlier, we're all in supply chain, either finding great people, finding great processes to use, or finding great material.
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the challenges, and I see people do this over and over again, and I think it's just a huge mistake, because you talk about killing the idea, or if it doesn't have legs, get it off the table. Stop wasting resources, and don't let those emotional, political attachments to it develop either, because those are virtually impossible to break sometimes down the road. But what people don't do is define the problem sometimes. So, sometimes people are very good at this, but you have to, before you can start developing the solutions, and that's plural, solutions, you have to know what the problem is. So one of one of my current mentors is always asking the question, and I sort of noticed this about him. He's always saying, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And if you can't articulate that, you're going to spin your wheels on developing the solutions, no matter what innovation process you have in place or how cross-functional the team is. So, if you always kind of try to ground yourself back in the supply, in working in supply chain, and what is the problem we're trying to solve? Because I will guarantee you, there are many ways to solve problems. There is never usually only one way. But if you understand what the problem is, then you're going to be so much, whether it's innovative or creative or tactical or practical about the ways of getting to that solution. So what you often find is that somebody comes up with a great idea, and everybody's working on it and moving it as fast as possible and spending resources on it, only to find out that they really never understood what the requirements were, right? What the problem was. And so, yeah, it's a great idea if you have this very, little problem. But that may not be the most important problem to solve. So just some thoughts.
I think that's great advice, particularly with innovation being such a buzzword in today's world. We're all like excited by shiny things, right? That's shiny, let's go do that. Well, nobody asked the question, can we sell it? Can we bill for it? Does anybody want it? And you've really got to think about, is that something that we want in our portfolio? Is it missing from our portfolio? Can we make money for our portfolio? Because at the end of the day, we're businesses, right? So we're not out there just to create things for the sake of creation.
And I think trying to understand the problem and asking the questions gets you out of being the naysayer,
That's
right? Because if all you're doing is saying, well, no, that's
right.
not, as opposed to being engaged and working with a group to try to understand what the problem is to be solved. And so
because then you get the business partner to actually get to the conclusion themselves, right?
Right.
Instead of you being the one that said, no, that's not a good idea, or no, I don't want to do that. If you keep asking the questions, they'll realize on their own what's going on.
And, that's I feel like we need a group hug. That's a great point too, because the most innovative things that ROI has put into the healthcare system, we pride ourselves in it not being perceived as our idea. Why? Because to be honest, no matter how great a supply chain we have, we're still supply chain, and sometimes you don't want to be the one imposing the solution, even if it's a great solution. So what we've done with the most innovative ideas is we found, in particular today, in today's world, physician champions. So what we do is we go out and work very, very collaboratively with our physician leaders. And Mercy is putting a lot of leadership responsibility on its physicians right now. So it kind of is a natural fit. But all of a sudden it's their idea, and they're out selling the idea, and they're out convincing their colleagues. And let me tell you, physicians carry a lot more credibility with physicians than supply chain people or Werschett lawyers. So,
Yeah, to build on that, I just thought about the piece that I would always say when I get in the healthcare space is I'm not a clinician. Because, if we have any doctors in the room, I apologize in advance. But it's like a God complex, and if I don't save lives, then surely I can't tell them what equipment to use. Which is why it's important for it to come from them. So in the spirit of collaborating, if you could make sure that you have a common goal or a shared goal. So in the industry where it's where the bottom line is, you're selling or you're growing the top line, is a little different model. In healthcare, it's really about managing the severity. Like you're attempting to save money, and sometimes the saving of the money can come from, can we at least agree that we're going to use the same materials? So we don't have all this waste, because we have physicians wanting to use their own brand or their own piece of equipment. And it's okay if you're only buying one cath lab, but if you're buying 16 and they're $1 million a piece, that can be pretty expensive. So can we agree on how we're going to do this? So if you can share the problem with them, so this is getting back to collaborating, if you can share with your physician family, for example, or with the group that, hey, this is the bucket of money that we have, and then begin to do your solutioning as it relates to what do you guys think we should do. I think that it comes across a lot better than, the bottom line is, we're always looking for lowest cost, and that's what we're taking. You're working with them and allowing them to see the balance sheet, so to speak. So I would support allowing it to be their idea and working with them to get to the end game, which is, this is all we got. How do we make the most of what we got? Which is a different story when you're inside of a healthcare system, because we're about saving lives. We're about quality of life. And we are externally too, but we're also about earning some money. So it's the balance. So if you can make them see that and own it, I like it being their idea. That's even better. I'm just here to help. I'm from purchasing, and I'm here to help.
So it's 2:15 now, so we have about 15 minutes before the next session, and we'd really just love to open it up I loved your comment earlier, Joanne, about be curious. So please be curious, and please feel free to ask. And then if there is any time, I have some other questions, but it'd be great to, any questions in the audience? About the, I mean, and now if you don't mind, I could open it up personally in terms of your career journeys, you know, other aspects. Surely, come on. You guys.
So you guys mentioned about asking questions to try to get your stakeholders to come to the conclusion themselves. And has there been a situation where you've done that at it's worked or you've tried to accomplish?
If we're thinking about embarking on contract manufacturing. So in the past, we have always done an agreement with a large OEM and really put all the weight on them. We think in order to have time to market, we need to own our own destiny a little bit more, which means that we need to do more an Apple sort of idea where we would actually do the design in conjunction with the design company, and then we would bid that out to the contract manufacturer. We would own some of the IP, we would do some of the development ourselves in-house. This was an idea that was cooked up by the chief technology officer, and that we were the folks that almost killed it. And it's funny because my quote was actually, I don't want to be the chick that kills innovation, right? That's not the legacy I want. So that was where I got this whole idea of asking a lot of questions and say, you know, well, have you considered the liability issues? Have you considered what happens if there's a fire in the plant? What happens if there's got to be a fatality in the plant? And these are things that in the past we would sort of go, oh, look, limitation of liability, indemnification, that all belongs on the OEM, well, now it's on us. Certainly getting a lot more into conflict minerals, human labor issues, things like that. So we had a cross-functional team with fairly high-level execs at the table and sat down and just asked a lot of questions. We kept asking. So we got to the point, and to your point too, there was a dollar amount that came out of it, right, that was surprising to some people. And so we're going to go ahead and do it, but it's going to be a much smaller scale that we're going to try to make sure that we'll ask all the questions.
Okay. One question I would like to ask, and it does go on to an executive search. Increasingly, you know, the level that we're working at, we're looking for technical skills. There again, right? So we need to have that. We need to have the experience, the leadership, the managerial experience. But at this level, what we're looking at is cultural fit and interpersonal skills. And quite often, and I was at a meeting recently, it was talking about women and promoting women within the organization. And this topic of executive presence came up. And it's a non-tangible, but it can be a showstopper. It can stop people from moving forward. And the example that I heard was very sensitively put, but there was this was around gender, so there was this terrific woman who was incredibly capable. She had a particular persona and a particular approach. It was inhibiting her, but nobody said anything because the content was great, but she was not moving up until somebody said, okay, maybe you need to approach things in a certain way. It was along the lines of, and I'm going to be very open, it was along the lines of, when you get an image consultant, why don't you have a look at things, because perception is important. And unless you're told by someone, it can be very hurtful. I mean, my husband told me recently, and it was, I actually really appreciated it. At the time it was quite hard. It's like, listening skills. That's what I'm doing. Right? But actually the context that he gave me after I got over it was, he was in a meeting recently with this, I mean, he has his own business and he's in fundraising mode. So he was with a CEO, female CEO, and he said, Cheryl, she was amazing because she just listened. And after I said some more, she asked another question. And then I said some more, and then she asked another question. And it was only until she really understood that then she gave an opinion. And she talked about it. And I, you know, after that first hurdle, I got over it and I really thought about it. Because I think, you know, everyone's guilty, I am more than ever, talking over people, thinking about, okay, what am I going to say next because I want to sound clever, or I just want to be engaged, I want to be... But listening is so incredibly important. So that was just like a personal story, but executive presence is really important. I wonder if each of you would kind of give us your thoughts, whether it's personal, whether it's people within the team, whether it's your observations. Just very interested to get your perspective on that. Michelle?
I will start with a disclaimer. It's the gospel according to Michelle Robinson. Since there's two of us on the panel. I live by something that someone told me a long time ago when I started out at GE, and it's an acronym of PI: performance, image, and exposure. The PI basically are the three elements that you have to have in your career in order to move up, or given the particular cultures that you interact. For me, mine was at GE. Performance is the very lowest part of the pie, which is surprising. It's only about 10 to 15%. And don't get it twisted. It's not to say that you don't have to do your job. It's to say that that's a qualifier. Like if you don't have the skills, if you don't have the experience, potentially, if you don't have the pedigree, so to speak, you're not even allowed in the room. And sometimes, particularly for women, and I'm just keeping it real as it relates to what, again, the gospel according to Michelle. So then the other two pieces of the pie is the image and the exposure. The image is basically the piece that Cheryl is mentioning. It's perception's reality, and we can debate it all day, but people will act based off of what they perceive you to be. So it's a game. You don't have to do it. It's free will. But if you're going to play in this game, you have to be aware of that image and what people are perceiving your image to be. And then work on it, get feedback. Feedback is a gift, by the way, so don't be disappointed. At least they're talking to you. You can either receive it or not, but it's a gift. So always receive the feedback. But then once you get the image, the last piece is exposure. And exposure is not always good. There is such thing as being overexposed. Like the young man or young lady that always comes up to you after the meeting and has like 50 things to say. It's kind of like, can you just work? I mean, you don't want to always be the one that's in the light, that's doing every activity. Sometimes less is more. So it's the balancing of the three. I would say the pie again is like 10 to 15% at most, but it's really about that image and that exposure. And you have to make sure that you balance the three because it's real. Feedback again is a gift. So those individuals, and you heard Joanne talk about it before, is walking up to people and asking, hey, I want to get that job, or what would it take for me to be, I'm curious about this assignment. Take the rough jobs. Take the tough assignments. Do things that nobody wants. Hang out in the supply chain where people don't want to hang out. If you do those types of things, you'll learn so much. It really helps with the image because you get stuff done. And then, of course, it gives you that exposure because people start seeking you out when they do have like complicated things to solve. But again, my disclaimer still hangs in the balance. It's pie. Performance, image, and exposure. And you choose whether or not you want to play the game. That's fine.
I mean, I think that's a fabulous acronym. The only thing I would say about image, because the first thing I started thinking is, okay, I've got flats on this because I kind of pulled my back, so because you worry, like, do I look right, correct? So the thing about image I think you have to be really careful about is it can't be fake, right? So the number of times that I've had people say to me, I find this such an interesting comment, you don't seem like a lawyer. What does that mean? You don't seem like a vice president. Okay, what does that mean? But honestly, I've decided to believe that those are positive comments, right? So that can speak through it. But I think it speaks to perception and I think it speaks to image, right? So I think you have to be authentic. And I mean, I used to, when I was younger, think that was like way too touchy-feely, like, but I really mean that because I think you can't fake sincerity, right? So you need to be you. You don't want to lose what's you in the whole equation. And that might not be, stiletto heels or the coolest suit or the most fashionable trend. It may not be, being more formal than you feel comfortable with. So, I've also had comments, you're too nice. I hate that one. You're too nice. Or you speak too much. Or you speak up. Or you ask too many questions. So you do have to filter feedback and decide what's important to you and what you need to have the image that fits you. And then you can deal with the consequences, right? I mean, you'll either be successful or you'll struggle potentially, and you'll make adjustments as you grow and mature and change, and you realize what the cause and effect is. So just be careful with the image. Now, I don't know if you would agree, Michelle.
No, well, what I would say is, first of all, it's an option, but to your point, if it's something you can't keep up, it's similar to dating. If the husband was doing it before you got married, he needs to keep doing it afterwards. So if you can't keep it up, then that's a good sign that maybe that, and I'm being sincere, that's a good sign that that's a place that you don't need to be. And then you're a top talent. And I can tell you as a leader sitting on this panel, I'm always looking for awesome people. So vote with your feet. You got skills. That performance that I said is a given. The image and exposure, that's you working the game. But at the end of the day, you wouldn't be there or be where you are if you weren't good. So by no means should you compromise who you are, and I would agree with that, if it's a place at the end of the day that you gotta be afterwards. Like, what happens when you get the job and you faked it? Like, you gotta keep that up. So I totally agree with you as it relates to that, but it's just being aware of that image that you're putting off, or the executive presence or lack thereof. First decide whether or not you want to play with them. And if you don't want to play those Rainier games, go ahead and show us to wear your flats and get to moving. You know, you don't have to be there. You know? But it depends on.
They're not terrible.
But with that said, you make the call. It's just being aware that those things are in play, and you're deciding whether or not you want to play.
I actually want to add on to that is we do need a group hug because authenticity was going to be the word I was going to use. So my story is that I was a director level, and I was finally able to have a child later in life. I only had one because I did wait a certain amount of time, and it became a really important thing to me, as it should. So I took a downgrade to work part-time as a manager, and then the person that approved that thought I'd do it for a year, I thought I'd do it for a year, and 5 years later I was still doing it. So, and then I did get a text message one day about, we have a job and you're the right person for it, you're the only one who can do it. Will you come do it? We bought another company and they wanted me to project manage, putting the networks together, which is a really cool job, so I did. I came back as a director, and have since been promoted twice. And but I tell my team, and there's a bunch of them here, so you can check in with them later, see Verizon on their name tag. I tell them all that my daughter is in 5th grade. It's the last year that I get to drop her off at school, and she still even lets me hold her hand sometimes while we walk there. So if I have a meeting at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, I am there. If I don't show up till 9 in the morning. And I tell everybody this because not only is it who I am, it's a very big piece of who I am, but I think it gives my team permission to do the same thing, right? And I do think that a big part of my job is to be a role model for the folks that I do think parenting and leadership are very much the same thing. And I want them to know that they have lives outside of Verizon, and that they need to take care of those lives as well, not just take care of the life that they have inside Verizon.
Some great comments, maybe just something from a little bit different perspective that I'd like to talk about is cultural fit. And one of the things that, as I was looking for my next opportunity, that I was really mindful of was understanding the company culture that I was joining, and how important that was to me, that I understood what was that like on a day-to-day basis, and was that really the right environment for me? Is it one that I felt that I could thrive and be successful in? Because if I couldn't, it didn't matter what the job was. It didn't matter where I was going to move to. It was really so important to ensure that not just it was the right opportunity, but so much a part of that was understanding the company culture, and was that a good fit for me? And that's been something that I think is really important to think about. And I actually, when I'm interviewing, I'm always sharing with the candidates what our company culture is, Because if they don't understand our company culture, they could have the best skills, but if it's not an environment that they can be successful in, I don't want them to take the position, because I know in the long run, it's really not going to be best, for either party. So, even in our interviewing process, just making sure that we're talking about company culture and fit, and really asking them, what type of environment can you be most successful in? What are you looking for? And sharing with them what our culture is like. I think that's such an important aspect of being successful and understanding what type of environment that you can thrive in and that you'll enjoy.
Well, thank you so much, on behalf of everyone here, thank you so much for your time.